Hello everyone and welcome back to the e-learning space of MGM Higher Secondary School, Bokaro. This is the second video lesson for grammar lesson number 15 of class 8 English. Lesson number 15 in our grammar textbook is titled Voice. In our last video lesson, we understood what is voice and what are its two different forms. We also went through the definitions and examples of each. Let us today understand about voices and their verb forms in a bit more detail. So based on your previous knowledge on active and passive voices, here is a small exercise for you. 3 sets of questions are given here with 3 sentences each. One of them is different from the two. So you have to locate which one is it and in which voice is it. I was stung by a bee. Only a female bee stings people. Bees can see all colors except red. So as far as I can tell, children, look at sentences B and C. Over here, the subject is doing the action. Only a female bee stings. Bees can see. So the subject is doing the action. So they are in active voices. But the very first sentence, I was stung by a bee. I is the subject here. But it is not doing the action. It is being acted upon. So the first one is in passive voice while the rest two are in active voices. Similarly, you're going to link question number 2 and 3 on your own and find out which one is different from the rest two and in which voice are they existing. Coming to your textbook, the form of a verb that shows the connection between the action and the participants in the action, the subject or object, is called voice. So this is a recap of the definition that we have done previously. The voice of a verb tells us whether the subject does the action or is affected by the action. Now, based on this definition, there are two types of voices, or let's say the verbs are in two different forms, that is active and passive. Father made these toys. Father is the subject. He is doing an action, that is he is making something, that is the toys which are the object. So when we are talking about active voice, then a verb in the active voice is when it shows that the person or thing denoted in the subject is the doer of the action. Always remember, children, if the subject is actively doing something, is an active participant in the action, if he is actively doing something, then it is in the active voice. Now look at the next example. These toys were made by my father. Now here the subject, these toys, it is not an active participant of the action. That is, it is not doing something. In fact, it is receiving the action. A verb is in the passive voice when it shows that the subject is acted upon or is affected by the action. So, passive receiver of the action. This should be your basic difference. Active participant, then active voice. If the subject is a passive recipient, then it is in passive voice. Recipient means somebody who receives something. Now, how to change sentences which are active into passive voices? Grandfather built this house. It is an active voice because grandfather, the subject in the sentence, is doing something. This house was built by grandfather. This house, the subject in this sentence, is not doing something. In fact, it is receiving the action. So to change sentences from active voices to the passive voice, we make these 3 changes. Firstly, we change the position of the object of the sentence and make it the subject. In the second sentence, the focus shifts to this house which is acted upon by grandfather. Then we use the preposition by for indicating the doer of the action, like by grandfather. We also change the verb form to show the passive voice. The passive voice requires a form of the verb be, which is used along with the participle form of the main verb. So built becomes was built. We are changing the verb form, we are changing the preposition, and we are changing the position of the subject object. Here is a small table to help you understand how the change of verbs are taking place. When a sentence is changed into the passive voice, the verbs in the sentences also change. Now see here. Verbs in the simple present tense change to am, is, are plus the past participle. For example, if in the active voice we say the boy cleans the room, in the passive voice it becomes the room is cleaned by the boy. We use the helping verb is and then we are using the past participle of the verb. So cleans becomes cleaned, and before cleaned we use a helping verb is. Now verbs in the present continuous change into am, is, are, but you have to use the word being and then the past participle of the verb form. The teacher is explaining the concept to us. We are being explained the concept by the teacher. Are is the helping verb followed by the word being and then the past participle of the word explain. That is explained. So this is the pattern, this is the structure which you have to keep in mind while transforming sentences from active voice to passive voice. You have to see what tense is there and which verbs will change, what helping verb will be added, which will be the past participle of the certain verb forms. All these have to be kept in mind. Verbs in the present perfect tense change to has or have been plus the past participle. The class has taken the unit test today. The unit test has been taken by the class today. Verbs in the simple past tense change to was or were plus the past participle. The girl bought a black dress for her birthday. A black dress was bought by the girl for her birthday. So looking at these active voices and following the guideline here, we can easily change active into passive. Verbs in the past continuous tense, you will have to use was and were along with being and then the past participle. Father was feeding the cat was being fed by father. So basic knowledge of all the forms of verb has to be kept in mind. The regular verbs, the irregular verbs, their past participle forms have to be kept in mind. Verbs in the past perfect tense change to had been and then the past participle. The company had arranged an annual party for its employees. An annual party had been arranged by the company for its employees. Verbs in the simple future tense change to will or shall plus be and then the past participle. For example, if in the active voice we will say, my uncle will take me to the bird sanctuary. In the passive voice, the same sentence becomes, I will be taken to the bird sanctuary by my uncle. So what have we done here? The position is changing of the verb and the subject and the object, of course. The preposition is being introduced, all right, but the form of tense is also changing. Will take becomes will be taken. Just now we saw how active and passive can be transformed when the tenses are such and such. Now with the help of models, or if there are models in a sentence, how are we supposed to make those transformations? So model verbs like can, may, must and plus the base form of the verb in the active voice change to the model plus be and past participle of it in the passive voice. For example, look at this. A tsunami may hit the coast tomorrow. So the coast may be hit by a tsunami tomorrow. What did we do here? The object becomes the subject. The model remains the same. But right before the base form of the verb, we have introduced the word be, and we are also using the past participle of that verb, and hence now the active changes into passive. Look at another example. An elephant can drink 210 liters of water each day. This is in the active voice because we can see the subject is doing the action. Now, the word can, which is modal, has been used in the active voice. So, if we have to change it into passive voice, first, of course, we will make the object into the subject, 210 liters of water. Then we will use the modal can. Then we will use the word be and the past participle of the verb drink, which is drunk. So the sentence in passive voice now becomes 210 liters of water can be drunk by an elephant each day. Look at another example. We must finish the homework this evening. It is an active voice because we, being the subject, is doing an action. Now, first thing, we will make the object into subject. The homework must. We'll copy the model as it is. We will introduce a new word be, and the verb finished will become past participle of the same verb. So it becomes finished. The homework must be finished by us this evening. Now this has been transformed into passive voice. In the very beginning of this video, we discussed while transforming active voices into passive voices, it is not only the reversal of subject and object or the change of tenses, we also change the pronouns. So look carefully what happens to these pronouns when they are being transformed from active to passive. I ate the cake becomes the cake was eaten by me. I becomes me. You ate the cake. The cake was eaten by you. He or she ate the cake becomes the cake was eaten by him or her. We ate the cake. The cake was eaten by us. They ate the cake. The cake was eaten by them. Notice the change of the pronouns here. Now, what are the rules of using the correct voice? Very carefully pay attention. We usually use the active voice when we speak and write. For example, the teacher gave us a quiz. We use the passive voice when the action is more important than the doer of the action. For example, English is spoken all over the world. Identity cards are checked at the entry gate. A concert is held in our school after every 6 months. So when the action is more important than who is doing that action, then we speak in the passive voice. We also use the passive voice when we want to emphasize the receiver of the action. The village was destroyed by the cyclone. So when we are trying to emphasize on the receiver of the action, then we use passive voice. We also use passive voice when we do not know the doer of the action. My wallet was stolen. So we do not know who the subject is or who did the action. So my wallet was stolen. In this way, we are using passive voices and active voice, and these are the correct rules to use them. Now that you have learned all about voice, the different forms of voice, that is active and passive, how to transform them, and what are the rules of using active and passive, let us test our knowledge and come to the textual exercises. Change these sentences from the active to the passive voice. Why did they waste so much food? The first one is already done. Why was so much food wasted by them? See the second one. I made this jam. This jam was made by me. Sanatan cooks our meals. Our meals are cooked by Sanatan. She wrote a beautiful poem. So what would be the passive voice? Right. A beautiful poem was written by her. Similarly, the rest of the sentences you will do in your English notebooks on your own. Coming to the second exercise, change these sentences from the passive to the active voice, and once again write them in your English notebooks. The first one is already done. The electric bulb was invented by Edison. Edison invented the electric bulb. See the second one. The tourists had been taken around the fort by the guide. The answer would be yes, the guide had taken the tourists around the fort. These reports will be typed out by them. They will type out these reports. Pay attention to the verb, the form of verb, the tense, the pronoun, etc. Why was the work not finished by your brother? Why didn't your brother finish the work? See the next one. The siren is going to be sounded by us. We are going to sound the siren. Do the rest of these sentences on your own. Coming to exercise C, tick the correct options indicating the conversion of the given sentences into the active or the passive voice. So the sentence is given to you. You have to tell which one is the correct transformation. We must read these instructions before we begin. These instructions must read by us before we begin, or these instructions have been read by us before we begin. We also have a third option. These instructions must be read by us before we begin, which is the correct answer. See the second one. The children may borrow the books. The books may be borrowed by the children. The children may be borrowed by the books. The books may be borrowed by the children. The first one, the books may be borrowed by the children, is the correct transformation. Do the rest of these exercises on your own. Now, changing the voice of imperative sentences. Would you all know what are imperative sentences? Those kinds of sentences which express commands and requests. So the question here is, are the rules a bit different for transforming active and passive voices if the sentences involved are imperative in nature? Let us find out. To change an imperative sentence from the active to the passive, start the sentence with let and use be along with the past participle. Shut the door. This is a command. It is in the active voice. This will become let the door be shut in passive voice. Serve the dessert in these bowls. It is an active voice. So we will use the word let, and right before the verb, which will be in past participle form, we will use the word be. Let the dessert be served in these bowls. When it is a negative sentence, then we will use not plus be and followed by the past participle of the word when we are changing an active imperative sentence into a passive imperative sentence. Don't eat stale food. The word don't here indicates that the active voice is negative in nature. So we will say, let stale food not be eaten. Now here is a third point to be kept in mind. Sometimes there may be two or more commands in a single sentence. We use the word be along with the participle for the first command and only the past participle for the other commands in the sentence. We leave out pronouns like them, that, and it. Look at the examples. Fold the sheets and put them in the cupboard. Let the sheets be folded and put in the cupboard. So put them. We have used the past participle of put, but we have ignored the pronoun them and completed the sentence. And because it is an imperative sentence, we have begun with the word let and we have followed the same structure, that is be and participle. Make the sandwiches, cut them and wrap them in paper. So once again we will see how many commands are there. Make, cut, wrap. So more than one commands are there. So we are going to use be and the participle of one of the commands. Then rest of them will be in past participle only without the word be, and we will also ignore any pronouns that is in the shape of them, that, or it. Look here. Let the sandwiches be made, cut and wrapped in paper. So the active voice, make the sandwiches, cut them and wrap them in paper, becomes let the sandwiches be made, cut and wrapped in paper. Coming to change the voice of these sentences. If they're in active voices, you have to change them into passive. And if they're in passive voices, you have to change them into active. But look at the sentences. What kinds of sentences are these? Dust all the furniture. Sounds like a command. This is an imperative sentence. So first of all, we will begin our sentence with the word let. Let all the furniture. We will use the word be and the past participle dusted. Let all the furniture be dusted. Plant the seeds and water them. Over here we have two commands. So one command will use be along with the participle, and the second will remove the pronoun and be only the past participle. Example, let the seeds be planted and watered. Please hoist the flag. This becomes let the flag be hoisted. Let the food be cooked and served. Now this is a passive imperative sentence. To change it into active, we will simply write cook the food and serve it. Rest of these sentences, you are going to do it on your own. Coming to exercise E. Complete these imperative sentences in the passive voice. Now completing a sentence is completely a subjective question. You can use any group of words to complete these sentences. However, make sure they make the correct passive voice. Let the trees be planted. Let the clothes be washed, ironed and placed in the cupboard. Let the decorations be put up. Let the children be bathed. Now you can complete the rest on your own. Rewrite this passage in your notebook using the verbs given in brackets in the correct tense in either the active or the passive voice. Agatha Christie, born in 1890, in the brackets, the verb is know throughout the world as the queen of crime. So let me help you with the first sentence. You may rewrite the sentence as Agatha Christie, born in 1819, is known throughout the world as the queen of crime. Second sentence, over 1 billion copies of her books in the bracket sell in the English language with another billion in 44 other languages. This you may write correctly as over 1 billion copies of her books have sold in the English language with another billion in 44 other languages. She, you have to use the correct verb form of be, the most widely published authors of all time. This can be written as she is the most widely published author of all times. Similarly, go through each sentence given in this passage, use the verb given in the bracket and write the correct tense form. Coming to the exercise, let's perfect it. Underline the verb in these sentences and state whether they are in the active voice AV or the passive voice PV. So this can be done in the textbook itself. Kailash Satyarthi won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014. So won is the verb form here, and which verb form is it? Active voice. So you'll write AV. A worldwide panic was caused in 2009 by swine flu. Was caused is the verb form here and the verb form is passive. Pandit Ravi Shankar played the sitar. Played is the verb form and it is again active because whenever the subject is doing the action, it is in the active voice. Whenever the subject is receiving the action, then it is in the passive voice. Christopher Columbus discovered the continents of North and South America. Discovered is the verb form and it is in the active verb form, or you can say active voice. By whom was the famous play A Midnight Night's Dream written? So over here, was written is the verb form, which is the passive voice. Rest of these sentences you are supposed to complete on your own. For any doubts, we have our online sessions. You're going to discuss it there. Coming to the table here, complete the table. In this table, some sentences are in active voice and some sentences are in passive voice. If the active voice is mentioned, change it into passive voice. If the passive voice is mentioned, change it into active voice. Let us see the first one. He weaves these shawls. We can also write it as in passive voice. These shawls are woven by him. Now, if in the passive voice the sentence is, these shawls are woven by us, what would be the active voice? We weave these shawls. In active voice, the sentence is, I am weaving this shawl. So in passive voice, we will write, this shawl is being woven by me. Keep the rules in mind, children. Look at the tense, which pronoun will change, where will the object and the subject go, and which new words have to be introduced, what form of the verb will take its place. Keep these things in mind. See the number 4. This shawl is being woven by the old woman. This is in passive voice. So the active voice would be, the old woman is weaving this shawl. Complete the table on your own in the textbook itself. Come to exercise C. Change these sentences from the passive to the active and rewrite them in your notebooks. The football match will not be played by East Bengal club on Monday. So East Bengal club will not play the football match on Monday. My papers were taken away by the man at the counter. The man at the counter took away my papers. The candles are being made by the students. The students are making the candles. These are quite simple. Important meetings are held by the director in the boardroom. The director holds important meetings in the boardroom. Similarly, go through all these sentences and convert them from passive to active. Change the voice of the sentences below as appropriate. Give a reason for not changing the voice. Complete the exercise in your notebook. One has been done. So what do you think is the meaning of change the voice of the sentence as appropriate? Remember, we have discussed the rules of active and passive voices. When a sentence should exist in active voice and when it should be changed into passive voice. So if you read a sentence and it fulfills the requirement of being in that voice, no change is required. For example, see the first one. I read a book. No change is needed because we're not talking about any specific book. So we need not change or give it the place of a subject. It's a simple sentence, I read a book. So let it remain in the active voice. Now look here, a carrot was given to the horse by the boy. Once again, no change is required. This sentence is in passive voice and it should remain in passive voice because we are emphasizing on the carrot. What was given to the horse, that is being emphasized upon, so this will remain in passive voice. Ali recited the poem very well. We can change this into passive voice. The poem was recited by Ali very well. Because we want to emphasize how the poem was recited. So the poem was recited by Ali very well. So when the point of emphasis is changing, we can change the voice of the sentence. See the fourth one. My uncle's house was broken into. Now here also no change is required because we are already emphasizing on who broke into the house. That is unknown, right? Because when the doer of the action is unknown, we have discussed it will be in the passive voice. A tsunami destroyed my hometown last winter. Now here we can change it into active voice. My hometown was destroyed by a tsunami last winter. Because over here, what was destroyed or what has been destroyed needs to be more emphasized. Do the rest of the sentences on your own. Coming to the composition given here, you're going to read this newspaper report. It's given on artificial intelligence that was held in school for some students, a school in Qatar. Just go through it, how a newspaper report is written. The guidelines are given to you. A heading should be there with a descriptive title. A byline should be there with the name of the person writing the report. The place and date should be mentioned. The opening paragraph should always summarize the key point of the report, and then the body should describe whatever events happen in greater detail. Now this is only for practice. Newspaper report writing is only for practice. So use the topic given here. Write a newspaper report in about 150 words in your notebook on your educational event that caught your interest recently. Then remember to follow the format that is given here. With that, children, we come to the end of our video on active and passive voices. Here are the assignments that you're going to do from the lesson. Complete all the textual exercises in the grammar textbooks, which we have already discussed in this video lesson. For any doubts, you're going to clear it up in our online classes. Then do exercise A and B given on page 125 in your English copies. Do exercise D and F on page 127 in your English notebooks, and exercises C and D given on page 129 in your English copies. Also, the composition given on report writing, practice it in your English practice copies, which is given on page 130. That's all for today in English grammar video lesson. Thank you and take care.